Welcome to another fun-filled edition of Second City Sports Zoom Style.
Zoom style.
Along with Lakeena McGee, who is she. I am Cindy Brown, which is me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
You can go to our website, weareregalradio.com, for more details about our podcast, articles, and other special features. That's WEAREREGAL radio.com. And you can follow this podcast, Second City Sports, along with our other podcast programming, courtesy of War Media, by simply searching for War on Anchor, which kicks you over to Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and that iHeartRadio app. Just type in that search engine box on all podcast platforms, War on Anchor. That's WARR on Anchor. Also, we on the Tube, aka YouTube, at War Media. Once again, at WARR Media on YouTube. You can not only listen to us, but watch us do our thing live as we blow kisses and take our bows in advance. Thank you for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
And follow us on social media at War Media. That's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at War Media. Once again, at WARR Media. And once again, you type in that name on the YouTube. So we do thank you for your support. We are unapologetically fun. Lakeena, this is one of the best times of the year. I wish selfishly we were back in studio. This is March Madness time, and since we are broadcasting live from Chicago, we'll start off with the Fighting Illini. They were the number one seed coming out of the Midwest. They are now sitting at home because the Loyola Chicago Ramblers defeated them by the score of 71-58 on Sunday from Bankers Life Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. Cameron Cudwick led Loyola with 19 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists. Colburn scored 21 points, grabbed 9 rebounds. He had a couple of steals for the Fighting Illini. Lakeena, before we really break this down, just my quick synopsis. The Illini didn't know what hit them. They did not come out prepared. Give Porter Moser, the head coach of Loyola, credit. They did their homework, especially in the first half. They set the tempo for the whole game. They played consistently for the entire 40 minutes. They played every possession like it was their last. Illinois, like I said before, they didn't know what hit them. They tried to establish some momentum towards the end of that first half and starting that second half, but Loyola kept coming. As soon as you thought Illinois was going to get back in the game, they cut the lead down to 6 twice. But as soon as that happened, Loyola put the pressure on again and never let their foot off the gas pedal.
Yeah, it's sort of like they dominated from the jump, right? I mean,
yes.
Look, they kind of jumped on them right away. They dominated on the inside and the boards. It was just, it's just amazing the way they did this. I mean, look, if you look at Cameron Crutwig and also Lucas Williamson, those two were the holdovers from that team that went all the way to the Final Four a few years ago. So it's not like these guys, you weren't gonna catch these guys off guard. They weren't exactly scared of Illinois, which is, you probably, take that for what it's worth. So, but you look on the flip side for Illinois, I mean, Io DeSuma was a non-factor. A lot of their guys, Trent Frazier was a non-factor. Adam Miller, those are two seniors, and they were both non-factors. And Miller made some sort of garbage time bucket slate, but it was all for naught. And look, Marquise Kennedy from Loyola. A lot of people aren't talking about him. He had 14 off the bench, so he came in, did what he needed to do. And look, I mean, Illinois was just outcoached, outmanaged, outplayed. And look, I think Kennedy, I think he wanted to go to Illinois. He's a Chicago kid too. He's a sophomore. Like I said, he had 14 off the bench, so it just an all out like blitz from Loyola. And look, I mean, we can argue all from till the cows come home about whether or not they shouldn't have been an 8 seed, but it is what it is in the tournament. So I mean, but look, Illinois it just seemed like we got the Illinois team that played against Michigan State that was sort of similarly outplayed. I don't it just I'm still flabbergasted at what happened on Sunday.
You know what, going back to Illinois, You do have to blame the players a little bit because I think they took this team for granted. I'm talking about Loyola. Loyola is one of the best defensive teams in the country. They grind it out, and that's what happened on Sunday. Illinois is an up and down team. They like to run, and that's when you have young athletes like they have, they like to run. Loyola is not built that way. I knew it was going to be a struggle for the Illini, but I thought they was going to pull out a couple big plays down the stretch and pull it out at the end. It didn't happen like that. But most of that blame goes to head coach Brad Underwood. I know that we didn't have the tournament last year, so we didn't get a chance to see what Illinois could do on the big stage. This was the first time that this group has been on the big stage. I'm not trying to give them an out, but we do have to factor that in a little bit. But with that being said, that all goes on your head coach to get these young men ready to play now. They were ready to play on Friday against Drexel. You saw them win that game by 29 points. They had to know that Loyola was a different team than Drexel was. And that's on your head coach once again. Now, switching into the other side with Loyola, I know I heard some people say this on Sports Talk Radio on Monday. I heard it again today. But the Loyola is not an 8th seed. They should have been 3 or 4 seed. Yes, it's easy to say that now. We didn't talk about this much on the air, Lakeena, but we all knew that Loyola was a better team than the 8th or 9th seed. And so I know most people didn't get a chance to watch them because they're not on national television as much. If you saw them on national television, it was during the Missouri Valley Conference Championship game against Drake this year. So if people paid attention at all, that would have been the one time because they were on national television. But Loyola, as we told you guys for the last few weeks leading up before the conference tournament, that they're a good team. They're going to be a tough out for somebody come tournament time. And Illinois found out the hard way on Sunday.
Yeah, and look, you give all the credit to Porter Moser and that team. I think that they weren't intimidated. They didn't, they just were like, oh my God, we're facing one of the top seeds. Look, this is what I was afraid of. We talked about it on our tournament preview show with ourselves and Kyle Means. Could they do this for 6 games? Can they keep up with the consistency, keep up with that style through all 6 games? And we saw on Sunday they didn't. And now they're on their way home and Loyola's advancing. That whole Midwest region is wide open with all the upsets that's happening in that region. I mean, I know there was some bets on whether or not, which region was going to see a lot of, upheaval. And, a lot of people didn't think it would be the Midwest region. I don't think anybody did. I don't think anybody did. I mean, I think a lot of people thought it was going to be, maybe not the West. And some people thought that, oh, well, that's the easiest, that's the easy region for Gonzaga. We'll see what they can do. Some people said that maybe the East region where Michigan is, so at least so far, with the exception of Valley Christian upsetting Texas, we'll get to them in a second. That's, that's kind of has kept, that sort of has kept that's sort of intact too. I mean, all of the other, it's been a little bit of some upsets here and there. I mean, really the West region is actually the one region where at least so far has kind of stayed intact, for the most part. So, that whole Midwest, I mean, look who's left. You got Loyola, you got Oregon State, Syracuse, we'll get to them in a second, in Houston. So those, those sort of, I'm a little surprised that region is as wide open as it is, but hey, this is what we like about the tournament.
You're listening to Second City Sports along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown as we talk about March Madness 2021. Lakeena, let's go back to the final Illini's loss to the Ramblers. I want to go back to the Ramblers side. As you mentioned, Marcus Kennedy scoring 14 points coming off the bench. We had Jordan Burnfield on a couple weeks ago, and we talked about this on our tournament preview show as well. Who's going to be that third guy to step up? You need 3 things in a tournament every year: guard play, inside presence, and the third guy to add some additional scoring. Marcus Kennedy did that on Sunday for Loyola. Cameron Krugwood, he had a tremendous performance against Coburn, scoring 19 points, as I mentioned at the top of the show, grabbing 12 rebounds. He was in Kofi's chest from the word go. And defensively, Loyola did a great job double teaming and triple teaming Colburn. I don't know if you saw this picture on Twitter, Lakeena. I forgot who tweeted it out. But during the game, Lucas Williamson late in that second half, after they double team Colburn, he came from behind and stole the ball. Kobe didn't see
Yeah.
Williamson coming. Someone tweeted the picture next to that, the Michael Jordan steal off of Karl Malone in Game 6 of the '98 Finals, because we all know what happened after that. So I was like, that was very interesting, almost same exact type of play, but the intensity defensively that Loyola brought, you have to give Porter Moser all the credit in the world. Now, on the flip side, I'm going to go back to the Illini. Unless I missed something, Lakeena, I didn't see Illinois running very much pick and roll, especially involving Colburn. He's more effective that way. They tried to feed him down in the post. It worked at times, but most of the time it didn't work. The Ramblers were prepared for that. You didn't run very much pick and roll with Colburn. And number two, let's give the Ramblers credit again, especially their defense, their perimeter defense. They shut Ayo Dosunmu down. He really couldn't get going. It was only a couple of times that he got into the lane and he did his patent layup. But outside of that, Dosunmu struggled shooting the ball, and he couldn't do what he wanted to, especially at the top of the key.
It just wasn't, like I said, he just was a non-factor. I mean, Wilson, look, there's a reason why he won Defensive Player of the Year in the Missouri Valley Conference. I mean, we're seeing it. We saw it. And look, I mean, he's definitely, look, we'll see what he does. I mean, I kind of feel like at this point, though some people said, well, like he still might leave, because he is a top prospect. But if you're Ayo, I mean, is this how you want to go out? I mean, especially when your coach and your AD kind of vouch for you, saying that, well, hey, you should have been, defensive, you should have been, conference player of the year, or perhaps maybe should get some national recognition for national player of the year. So I think is this how you want to go out? I mean, again, that's another discussion for another episode. But I kind of feel like if you're Illinois, I mean, look, you were kind of, puffing your chest. You were saying like, hey, you know what, we're kind of like the team. We should be up there with Gonzaga and Baylor and, fellow Big Ten or Michigan. Well, look what happened. I mean, you won the Big Ten tournament, and that's fine. But the fact that you kind of struggled to shoot, and you just were just outplayed, that's not a good look.
It's not a good look. And as I mentioned before, this is the first time as a group that had been on the big stage, and you took Loyola for granted, and you had to be prepared for every game, especially come March Madness time. As we said before, Lakeena, we like this type of atmosphere every year because anything can happen. We'll review the games coming up from the weekend in just a few minutes, but this is what happens when you take a team that you think you're supposed to be in your head for granted. You don't come prepared, i.e. your head coach. This is what happens. Now, taking a look at the box score for the Illini, as you mentioned, Andre Miller only had 10 points in 26 minutes of action. Trent Frazier, no one is talking about this, but if you remember his second shot of the game, Lakeena, he came down the lane and he landed on his shooting hand, which is his left hand. He struggled from there on after. I think they played a big part. He only scored 2 points. He only shot 1 to 10 from the field, including 0 for 5 from three-point land. And you didn't get much from your bench either. Frank Williams, kid, he played 22 minutes. DeMonte Williams, he only scored 2 points. Aaron Cabello, the freshman, who I like, who's coming back next year, Andre Cabello, he only had 9 points in 26 minutes of action. There was not one person that stepped in on a consistent basis in terms of scoring to help out Colburn and Dosunmu, especially with Dosunmu's struggles offensively.
Yeah, I forgot all about DeMonte Williams. It makes you feel old, right? We remember.
Right.
Oh my God.
We talked about him in our last podcast. I heard someone mention after we got off air. I was like, "That's Frank Williams." So I'm like, I forgot about that. Woof.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, look, someone mentioned it, I think, like earlier this season, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, because I remember Frank tweeted that he was coming to his alma mater. But yeah, but like you said, so I mean, he was kind of a non-factor. I mean, I just think that. It's just unfortunate that, look, I mean, we like seeing, the blue bloods. We like seeing, but we also like see the Cinderellas. Don't call Loyola Cinderella, folks. I mean, this is a team that's been there. They're not intimidated. They've shown.
You just stole my next point.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's sort of one of those things where you just, you know what? Look, you give Loyola all the credit. They deserve it, from Porter Moser to the players to everybody. It was a total team effort. And look, they were just a better team. It's just that simple, and they wanted it more.
You're listening to Second City Sports along with Lakeena McGee, who is she. I am Cindy Brown, which is me, as we talk about the March Madness Tournament 2021. Lakeena, let's start reviewing some of these key games, give our thoughts on some of these key games from the weekend. We'll start with Friday's action. The first major upset of the day took place between Ohio State and Oral Roberts. Oral Roberts got by Ohio State 75-72 in overtime. Kevin O'Banner scored 30 points for Oral Roberts. E.J. Liddell had 23 for Ohio State. Lakeena, Oral Roberts had the heart. They stepped up when they had to. Ohio State crumbled down the stretch here.
Yeah, I mean, and of course, Liddell got a lot of, mean texts and tweets afterwards,
Which is sad.
That's uncalled for. I mean, let's remember,
Yeah.
folks, these are just games. And these are just, young people. So let's, you want to be, frustrated that they lost, fine. But to call someone names and this and that, I mean, it is just, especially now you're throwing in gambling, which look, you're probably going to have to get, maybe some security on some of these, top tier players, just saying. But again, another story for another episode. But look, I mean, Ohio State could not get the shots when they needed to. Dwayne Washington Jr., missed a couple of key shots that would have, not only sealed the game, but perhaps would have tied it in overtime. Just a lot of struggles. I mean, Liddell, did what he needed to do. He had double 23 and 14, but again, there was just, not a lot of help outside of them. So, it's unfortunate there. Look, we said that Oral Roberts, I mean, this was a team that, that probably could be a fit for, it could be give fits to someone. I mean, look, Abanor for Oral Roberts, I think he's first team, I think all Summit, I think, if I want to say. So, I think he was a big factor there. And look, Oral Roberts, I mean, they're sort of like, we'll get to them in their later game, but I think, look, they showed a lot of heart, and look, they deserve every note to be the new Cinderella.
Another upset from Friday's action took place in the Midwest region. Number 11, Syracuse, the Orangemen upset the San Diego Aztecs, the number 6 seed, 78-62. Buddy Boeheim tallied 30 points, while Matt Mitchell led the Aztecs with 17 points and 8 rebounds. Lakeena, I'll be honest with you, I didn't watch much Syracuse basketball this year, but Jim Boeheim, the legendary coach, had these guys up and rolling, and they shocked the world. I know they busted some brackets already. We'll get to their later game in just a couple of minutes, but they came up on top and dominated San Diego.
Well, to finish the point of Oral Roberts, I mean, now Michigan State and Ohio State have something in common. They were both 15 seeds. They were both 2 seeds, lost to a 15. So Ohio State was the Knights. So there you go. But now going back to Syracuse, I mean, look, I understand San Diego State. I know they don't have to deal with the 2-3 zone in the Mountain West. Most teams do not play that. But even still, I mean, you should have at least been prepared for it. That's a scouting issue. That's a coaching issue. They were just cold shooting, and look, Syracuse does every few years. They come to the tournament and annoy everybody and bless folks' brackets. Yippee, yay, okay, whatever. I mean, look.
Go ahead.
Say what you say about Jim Boeheim and how you feel about him. But look, his son can ball. Look, he's been there. Look, he was like 5 when they won the last national championship with Carmelo. And I don't even think was he born? No, he's like 20. So no, he wasn't even born yet. No, he might have been born. No. He wasn't even born yet. So there's a freaky thought. But look, I mean, we know he can hoop, and look, Syracuse, like I said before, every couple of years they come in and out of nowhere and just annoy everybody. That's it. That's all I have to say about them.
Another upset that took place this time in the South region, the number 13 North Texas upset number 4, the Purdue Boilermakers 78-69. Javion Hamlet led UNT with 24 points and 12 rebounds, while Trevion Williams led Purdue with 14 points and 13 rebounds. Another Big Ten team. No.
Oh, we're getting some problems here with says Mike. Yeah, well, the Big Ten unfortunately has not looked good. in this tournament. I mean, they only have a few teams left. I mean, I know, look, the Fighting, Little Rahimis of North Texas. I mean, they totally deserve that game. And Javion
Yay,
Hamlin.
Layla.
Yeah, look, Javion Hamlin. I mean, his story, is amazing. His backstory. So if you guys haven't a chance to, you guys should definitely check it out.
Mhm.
But look, I mean, look, North Texas. Look, I said it before. I mean, they were going to be a big fit for someone. Their style of play, and Purdue just didn't have an answer for it.
Yeah, the Purdue did not have an answer for it at all. Another upset that took place in the Midwest region on Friday. Number 12, Oregon State, the Beavers upset the Tennessee Volunteers 70-56. Roman Silva led Oregon State with 16 points. Keon Johnson led Tennessee with 14. Total domination here, especially late by Oregon State. I'll be honest with you, Lakeena, I did, if you remember back on our previous show, I did talk about this matchup and possibly Oregon State winning this game, especially coming off their performance in the Pac-12 tournament. They carried that momentum until that big win on Friday.
I wasn't shocked by this. I mean, look, Tennessee's been Jekyll and Hyde all season. At times they were really good, but then there were times you're like, oh, they weren't very good at all. And look, I mean, like I said, Gary Tinkle has done a great job building that Oregon State program.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Ramon Silva. If you haven't heard too much about him, I think he was like all Pac-12, I think second or third team. So he totally deserving of this. And this was a team that needed to win, that had to win their the conference to get into the tournament. So and they've been taking in full advantage.
Yeah, wrapping up Friday's action, number 10, Rutgers and Ron Harper Jr., they get past the number 7, Clemson, 60-56. And this game was a shocker to me, the 8-9 matchup out of the South region. The Wisconsin Badgers dominated North Carolina 85-62. Brad Davison led Wisconsin with 29 points, while Armando Babcock led the Tar Heels with 15.
That's a season. For Davis, that was a season high for him, that 29. So, I mean, again, North Carolina, same thing. You never know which North Carolina team you were going to get. So that was sort of a toss-up game. And just in this case where, Wisconsin dominated, it's just that simple.
All right, let's head over to Saturday's action. 14 got by a 3 seed as Abilene Christian defeated the Texas Longhorns 53-52. Joe Pleasant led Abilene Christian with 11 points, 8 rebounds, while Jericho Sims had a double-double for the Longhorns with 10 points and 11 rebounds.
22 turnovers for Texas. That's not going to win you a lot of games, even though Abilene Christian does cause a lot of turnovers. So they would use that to their advantage. And look, Texas didn't score for, I think, 4 minutes in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Those last few minutes, so those crucial minutes. So I think that was a big factor as well. And I think that Abilene Christian, like I said, I mean, this. Going from the Southland Conference. I mean, I said that this was going to be a team, if they got in, would be a big fit for someone, and they were a fit for Texas. So it is what it is.
Yeah, number 3, Kansas gets by number 14, Eastern Washington, the Eagles, 93-84. I did have both of my eyes on this game for the majority of this contest. Kansas struggled out early, but they made some plays late at the end. Tanner Gross had a great performance with Eastern Washington, scoring 35 points. David McCormick led Kansas with 22 points and 9 rebounds. I thought Kansas was going to go down for a while, Lakeena, but they had enough experience and enough big plays down the stretch to get by Eastern Washington. This score, people think that Eastern Washington just padded their stats at the end. No, folks, they were in it to the last few minutes.
Yeah, look, I watched a little bit of that game, and look, it was sort of close. It was touch and go for Kansas, but look, like you said, talent, usually in these situations in the tournament, talent usually prevails in the end, and that's what happened with Kansas.
Yeah, in the West region, number 13, Ohio gets by number 4, the Virginia, technically the defending national champions, 62-58. Jason Preston led Ohio with 11 points and 13 rebounds. Sam Hauser for Virginia led the Cavaliers for 15 points and 9 rebounds.
For Virginia, I mean, look, this was they've had COVID issues. They didn't get to Indiana until Friday because they were, it was such a go whether or not they would be able to play. So, a lot of people were sort of wondering, like, okay, we see the Virginia team that we always, we saw, earlier this season, but unfortunately in this case, that was, that that unfortunately that's what happened. So I think for Virginia, look, give Ohio all the credit in the world. I mean, you know, we'll see how far they can advance, but I think this was just one of those days where I think a lot of just a lot of synopsis and a whole lot of factors kind of went into that upset.
Creighton gets by UC Santa Barbara 63-62 out of the West region. In the East region, number 5 Colorado blows out Georgetown 96-73. Patrick Ewing in his tournament debut as the head coach of the Hoyas, he did not look good. I did watch most of the first half. Georgetown struggled shooting the ball. Colorado took advantage of their mistakes and capitalized on them.
Yeah, I mean, look, this was a big trendy 5-12 upset, and look, Jabari Walker, all Big 12, guard said, nah, you know what, we're not doing that. And unfortunately, the shots that were hitting for Georgetown in the Big East tournament just didn't hit in their game. So, this is sort of like the 5-12 that, you thought would expect. Now, all the 5-12s, there were no 5-12 upsets. A lot of people, we thought that maybe all 4 of them, but nope, that couldn't be the case. And Creighton knows that they squeaked by UCSB. They know they did. Look, Greg McDermott said after the game, yeah, they know they just squeaked by, but.
Staying in the West region, as we would continue to review Saturday's action, the number 6 USC, I should say, Trojans, they get by 11 seed Drake, 72-56. Drake had a big win in that first 4 game against Wichita State on Thursday. USC got the best of them on Saturday. Evan Mobley, who I think is going to be a top 10 pick, he has 17 points and 11 rebounds for the Trojans. Drake, they just couldn't get it going on a consistent basis, especially in that second half, only scoring a total of 19 points.
Yeah, it's sort of, it's unfortunate because they weren't at full strength. Drake was, and their top scorer was just coming back from an injury, so you got to think that he still didn't have his legs. And look, USC, give them credit, they made the shots where they needed to pull away.
Yeah, Maryland gets by UConn 63-54 in the East region, that 10-7 matchup. This was one of the other better games of the day from Saturday staying in the West region. Number 8, the Oklahoma Sooners get by number 9, the Missouri Tigers 72-68. Jeremiah Tillman has 16 and 12 for the Tigers, while Austin Reeves scored 23 and grabbed 4 rebounds, dished out 6 assists for the Sooners.
This matchup gave me like Big 8, Big 12 vibes from back in the day from these two played each other. I mean, this is sort of very similar to what where we used to see when they were in the Big 12. I mean, Oklahoma didn't have their top scorers, but they were able to kind of capitalize on some mistakes that Missouri made late, and made the shots when they needed to.
And wrap it up Saturday's action. After beating the Michigan State Spartans in their first 4 game on Thursday, the UCLA Bruins, they get by BYU 73-62. Johnny Juzang scored 27 points for UCLA.
Look, I mean, Mick Cronin has done a great job, building that UCLA program. I mean, we'll see how far they go. And look, that's a nice deep squad. And look, I mean, we thought that Mick Cronin's coach teams would be best for their defense, but it's actually been their offense has actually been sort of paying dividends for them so far in the tournament. We'll see how far they can go.
And the Oregon VCU matchup in the West region, the 7-10 matchup, was an uncontested game due to COVID issues within the VCU program. So Oregon advanced, and so that's the Saturday action. Lakeena, I say we may have a minor hiccup or 2 of this NCAA tournament. That was the one, but as we said before, the NCAA is going to power their way through this thing because they have money on the line.
It's unfortunate how this happened because the circumstances and sort of how it was all set up, because apparently I guess they were the VCU, the Rams, they were in their team meal, they were in the middle of their team meal, and then they got the word that I guess 3 of their guys tested, or the people within the team tested positive for COVID. So it's just unfortunate that's how a season ends for a team. And look, you hope that this isn't, become a theme here, because I feel like, look, this is sort of the new, we hope this is not the new reality, but
Mm-hmm.
But again, I mean, we were afraid that something like this was going to happen, and so we'll see how Oregon does. They'll have the freshest legs out of everybody, since they didn't play. I know some people thought that maybe it wasn't fair that they weren't able to, that VC wasn't able to play, but what can you do?
Yeah, what can you do? Since we have a few minutes left, Lakeena, you're listening to Second City Sports, along with Lakeena McGee, which is she. I am Sidney Brown, which is me, as we continue to talk about the first and second round action of the NCAA tournament. Since we have a few minutes left in this segment, Lakeena, let's review the key games from the action on Sunday. Number 1 seed, the Baylor Bears get by Wisconsin 76-63 in their second round matchup in the South region. Davion Mitchell led Baylor with 16 points and 8 assists. Micah Potter led Wisconsin with a double-double with 10 points and 10 rebounds.
They were 8 for 21 for 3, Wisconsin. So those threes that were hitting for them on Friday against North Carolina, it wasn't happening against Baylor. Look, Baylor is showing you that, look, I think they're starting to find their groove here. I know that they had to shut down for a few weeks because of COVID. I think they've had COVID issues pretty much, at the beginning of the season too. So, Scott Drew's been very open about that. But look, I mean, we'll see how far they can go. I mean, look, I think this Baylor team, I mean, they go back to the Sweet 16, and look, I think this is a team that could probably perhaps maybe get to the Final Four. Well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, speaking of the Sweet 16, Syracuse, who we talked about earlier, they got by West Virginia 75-72. Buddy Boeheim tallied home 25 points and grabbed 3 rebounds. Sean McNeil was the man for West Virginia, scoring 23 points.
Yeah, I mean, they made the shots late. I mean, I'm not, there's no, not really, really nothing much to say. I mean, this is the old, Big East backyard brawl from back in the day. So
yeah,
yeah, you remember that, Sid. So yeah, I mean, look, Buddy Boeheim, look, he can ball. We know this, and we've seen it all the year. And they just made the shots late. There's really nothing, and unfortunately, West Virginia picked the wrong time to miss some key shots. So what? Again, it's sort of one of those days where, look, well, what can you do?
Speaking of games coming close down to the wire, number 3 Arkansas, the Razorbacks get by number seed the Texas Tech Red Raiders 68-66. Justice Smith led Arkansas with 20 points and 6 rebounds. Kevin McCullough led the Red Raiders for 15 points and 8 rebounds.
An old Southwest Conference matchup between these two. I mean, look, I watched this game. Our buddy Spiro Ditas, got a chance to call this game, and
yes.
And look, I mean, Eric Musselman has done a great job with the Arkansas program. Their first Sweet 16 appearance since 1996. I was shocked when Dana Jacobson mentioned that.
I know, it makes us feel old.
I know. We're talking like 40 Minutes of Hell, Northern Richardson,
yes.
days. I mean, that's how long ago it's been. And look, this is a totally different, style than that 40 Minutes of Hell. But, again, I mean, look, Justin Smith's one of the leading scorers for Arkansas, and we'll see what they can do. I mean, I really like this Arkansas team, and Eric Musselman has done a great job, and I'm dying to see what they can do for the rest of the way.
Another Big Ten team goes down as number 10 Rutgers loses to the number 2 seeded Houston Cougars in the Midwest region 63-60. Quentin Grimes led Houston with 22 points and 9 rebounds. Geo Baker led Rutgers with 14 points.
Oh, I gotta apologize. This was a game our buddy Spiro Diaz called for Turner, Rutgers, and Houston. But look, this was a really great game, and you thought that maybe Rutgers was gonna win it. They were up by, I think, like 5 points, but yet, Houston, Houston, look, Quentin Grimes, who was the player of the year of the American, I mean, he made the big plays, they made the big stops, and look, I mean, Kelvin Sampson has another team going to the Sweet 16. I mean, I'm hoping that this isn't, we don't have to wait another 25 years for Rutgers. They got a good going there, and I hope Ron Harper Jr. comes back next year, and hopefully they can go far. But I can't wait to see what the future holds for both teams.
America meets your new Cinderella outside Loyola, Chicago. Number 15 seed Oral Roberts gets by number 7 Florida in the South region in the 15-7 matchup, 81-78. Kevin O'Banner led Oral Roberts with 28 points and 11 rebounds. Trey Mann added 19 points and 7 rebounds for the Gators.
And they'll play Arkansas in the next round. And
can't wait for that one.
Yeah, and also there'll be a lot of jokes when we're going to be hearing them all week. Thanks a lot, Florida. Look, I mean, they didn't quit. They didn't, or Roberts didn't quit. I mean, or the fighting Russ Dorsey, our buddy Russ Dorsey, he's a Oral Roberts grad, as if you saw on his Twitter. He's been very open about that. But yeah, look, Amador, again, with 28, I mean, look, I think Florida, unfortunately, I think went back to kind of the habits, missing shots, making sloppy plays on offense. It was sort of both. It was sort of Oral Roberts and their great defense, but Florida was going back to the bad habits that plagued them all season.
Wrapping up the action from Sunday, number 5 Villanova, they get by North Texas 84-61. And another Cinderella for this year in 2021 in the tournament, number 12, the Oregon State Beavers, they get by number 4 Oklahoma State. The Cowboys 80-70. Ethan Thompson led Oregon State with 26 points. Cade Cunningham, we've been talking about Lakeena for the last couple of weeks, 24 points for Oklahoma State. I think Cunningham has played his last game in a Oklahoma State uniform. Oregon State moves on to play the Loyola Ramblers of Chicago next Saturday at 1:30 p.m. That's on CBS. We'll preview that game in our next episode. But Oregon State, along with UCLA and USC, Pac-12 basketball is starting to get some love here nationally.
Going back to Villanova for a second, the one year where a lot of folks probably didn't pick Villanova, like, okay, darn it, really? But
yeah.
Look, I mean, that's a testament to Jay Wright and that staff and, the program itself. So, I wouldn't be surprised if they make a run, but, that should be interesting in that South region. But, yeah, going back to the battle of the confusing burnt orange OSUs, as I called it on Twitter last night, with, a couple of nights back with, Oregon State, Oklahoma State. It's just that, the tenacity of Oregon State. Look, we talked about them and look, like I said, they made the stop slate, they made the shot slate. And look, I think Cade Cunningham, didn't really have a lot of help, those last few minutes. They tried, but it just wasn't there. And Oregon State was just too strong with them. And yes, this will probably be his last college game. But it was great that we got a chance to see him in the tournament. So that, I think, we can take that. We can kind of take that for it. So for what it's worth. So.
Yeah, I wish I would have got to see him longer, but it doesn't always work out that way. Any last minute thoughts or surprises from this weekend's action before we hit our timeout?
Like I said, that Midwest region where Illinois is, I mean, that's there for the ticket for Houston. So if Houston wants it, they're going to have to face a couple of tough teams, to do it. But look, I think that Midwest region is wide open now. So we'll see if Houston can take it. And look, as far as the other regions, we'll see how everything sort of shapes out. But look, this is what the tournament is all about. I mean, you want to see upsets, but in the end, you want to see, the quote blue bloods, the top teams, because, for Ray's purposes as well. I mean, because I don't think people want to see, people don't want to see Loyola versus, I'll just say, Abilene Christian in the championship. Nobody. I know folks say they like upsets, but do you want to see an Abilene Christian Loyola championship game? No, you don't. You want to see Baylor and Gonzaga, or Baylor, Michigan, what have you, or Kansas, Michigan, whatever, however they set up. So, I think it's great to see upsets, but I think in the end you want to see those top tier teams.
I'll just say this before we wrap up our first segment here. I've been hearing a whole lot of people talking about those talking points that you have been that you just mentioned a moment ago for the last couple of days. I don't think the one and done era will come to a close just yet. Here's why: because, like you say, you want those big teams to be on your national stage competing for titles. From a business aspect, I get it. But we talked about this even back in the studio, Lakeena, for the last couple of years. I know we didn't have the tournament last year, but given the circumstances this year especially, you have those quote-unquote mid-major teams that had to do twice as hard of a job, unlike your major schools, to get the half the credit that they think they deserve. You're seeing this this year more than ever. And from that aspect, I am proud of the Loyola Chicagos. I'm proud of the Oral Roberts and programs like that. You have those types of programs. They have kids that are there 3 or 4 years. They're able to grow together, develop chemistry, and stay together. You don't see those in Duke and Kentucky and North Carolina. You just don't see them because they're already stacked with talent coming in and out every year. And so those major schools that are still left in this tournament, props out to them. And you see better play, especially fundamentally from those teams.
Well, I think you just said it, Sid. I mean, the fact that these guys are together 3-4 years, and they can, like you said, they can develop in the off season. They can play together in the off season, and look, I mean, I think that look, the Kate Cunninghams and guys like that. I mean, look, that's not gonna stop, and I think that's why I don't think we're gonna be away with the one and does. I know some people have said that they should just do away with them. Look, they may do what LaMelo Ball did and not go to college at all, and just play internationally. We might see some of that, but I think that in the end, I think we're going to do the one and done. I think people want to see, for the business side, I think they want to see it play. I think the NCAA, I think they want to see more of those particular teams. People want, like I've been saying, people want to see the blue buzz. Look, it's good to see. Yes, of course, it's great to see the Loyolas and the Oral Roberts and the Abilene Christians every once in a while. Veteran, teams with juniors and seniors. Junior and senior teams say, hey, you know what? Yeah, okay, yeah, we want to see them win a couple of games in a turn. But again, you want to see. Look what happened this year with with Duke and Kentucky. They've got some very likely one and dones, but it didn't materialize for them. But look, the good news is that in the end, look, we'll see the Gonzagas, guys that were there 3 or 4 years. Baylor's got a lot of 3 or 4 year guys. Michigan, 3 or 4 year guys. So, it's definitely twofold depending on how you look at it, Sid. But at the same time, though, like we've been saying, I don't think they're going to do away with the one and done rule. I just don't. Maybe
I don't either.
Maybe down the line, but I think if the NCAA and the NBA will work together and say, look, help me help you, or vice versa, like, okay, we'll put a rule in that if guys want to stay 1 year, maybe I don't think they're going to do 2 years, because I don't think a lot of these guys, these top prospects, are going to want to stay in college for 2 years. I don't think they're going to have the patience for it. But
even though some of them need it.
Yeah, exactly. So
from a fundamental standpoint.
Oh, absolutely, to develop those types of skills. So, kind of rub your elbows with each other and say, okay, let's figure out what we can do to kind of make sure the other can succeed, because the NBA is still doing great, and that's in that front, but this NCAA just, in the last few years especially, just hasn't, on the basketball side, in that, at least, but I just don't see them. They're not going to do. Well, again, we'll discuss this more down the line when it comes up, but I just don't see them doing away with the one and done rule. I just don't.
All right, we'll take this quick 20-second timeout on Second City Sports. You thought this segment was hot. The next segment will be hot as well, as we talk about the Chicago Bulls. Oh, boy. In the NBA, a couple of key injuries may impact the way the rest of the season will play out. It may affect the start of the NBA playoffs. We shall see. Along with Lakeena McGee, which is she, I am Cindy Brown, which is me. You're listening to Second City Sports. Welcome back to Second City Sports Zoom style.
Zoom style.
Along with Lakeena McGee, which is she, I am Cindy Brown, which is me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidK80. That's once again at SidK80, SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena McGee on the IG.
You can go to our website, weareregalradio.com, for all of our articles, podcasts, and other fun stuff. That's WEAREREGAL radio.com. You can follow this podcast, Second City Sports, along with the other podcast programming from War Media by simply typing in that search engine box on all podcast platforms or on Anchor, which keeps you over to Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and the iHeartRadio app. Type in that search engine box, WARR on Anchor. And we're also on the tube at War Media, once again, at WARR Media on YouTube. You can not only listen to us, but watch us do our thing live. And also, before we take our bows, you can follow us on our all social media platforms at War Media. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at War Media. Once again, at WARR Media on all social media platforms. Thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We are unapologetically fun, and Lakeena, I don't know how much fun we're going to have in this segment as we talk about the Chicago Bulls. We'll get to the rest of the NBA in a few minutes. Lakeena, the Bulls had another split of weekend action. They defeated the Detroit Pistons on Sunday. We'll review that game in just a moment, but let's start with the bad news. They lost to the Denver Nuggets on the road on Friday, 131-127 in overtime. Lakeena, as we left as we left on Saturday's show, we told you that when the episode was released, they assumed that the Bulls would lose to the Nuggets. We were correct, but how they lost it, it is heartbreaking. They lost a 14-point lead. Lakeena, as I said all season long, especially for the last few weeks, if you're the Bulls, you have to play 48 minutes of basketball. You can learn something from the Loyola Ramblers, as we talked about them in our last segment going back to March Madness. You got to play with intensity. I sound like the late North family. You got to play with some intensity for 48 minutes. You cannot let up. You got to play a complete game. That game on Friday was there to be taken. You had a 14-point lead. You blew it, and you got to play it in overtime. I know that this was I'm not going to say a rebuilding year, but this was a evaluation year for many players on this Bulls team. But now they're starting to get some respect around the league. But as I said before, you want to take your game to the next level. You want to be respected more as a team. You think you're a playoff team. You just don't give away games like this, especially against better teams. You just can't.
They had the game in hand, Sid. They had the game in hand. And, of course, they decided to double, Jokic, leaving Jamal Murray wide open for the three-pointer.
My guy.
We love Jamal Murray. But, yeah, I mean, come on. This is getting ridiculous. I mean, this is the third time this season that they've had games, right there for the taking for them to win. But yet, they just, and also 2-1 overtime that you kind of figure now, why bother? Because they weren't going to have an answer for it. And it's just again, I think this just shows you that this team, they're not there yet. Yes, there's been some great performances. There's some guys that show some flashes, but they're not there yet. And look, we don't know what Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley, we don't know what they're going to do, either whether it's a trade deadline or down the line in the season. Everybody's trying to have their theories. Everybody's trying to be amateur GM. It's just absurd. But again, whatever. We'll see what they do. I mean, I'm glad that they're not saying anything, which I've said it for months. That's a good thing. I'd rather have the front office working behind the scenes than to have them be on social media constantly. But look, this team's gonna look a lot different next year. I know I've heard some folks say, well, they should just tank the rest of the season and try to get a draft pick position to get guys like a Cade Cunningham or somebody like that. I've heard other people say, well, hey, look, let's see what we can do, to play in. We'll see how we measure up against the teams in the East. Look, whatever they decide to do, that's fine. They cannot have these types of games. They just can't.
And this is where it comes to bite you in the come the end of the season, where they're trying to qualify for the playoffs or they're playing a tournament through the 7 through 10 spots. These games, as I mentioned last week, are going to hurt you. You just can't give away games like this, especially in double digits late. Now, taking a look at the box score from last Friday's loss, Thaddeus Young had 11 points and 10 rebounds, which is good. He's been good all year. I know Bulls TV analyst Stacey King calls him Thaddeus Johnson, and rightfully so. But looking at Lauri's numbers, only 4 of 11 shooting, 10 points. Even though your team scored 127 overall, that's just not going to get it done. Thomas Satoransky was okay, scoring 8 points, dishing out 5 assists. Yes, he's the new starting point guard for now for this Bulls team. I know Zach being added 32 points, which was good, but we finally have an Otto Porter Jr. sighting, of course, because of course he's trying to get paid this summer, but it won't be from here. But he added 22 points coming off the bench, and Kobe White in 28 minutes of action off the plane chipped in with 17. So you start to see some signs in terms of players coming off the bench, but as you mentioned, Lakeena, when it matters the most, this team cannot stick together. On the court. It just you cannot have moments like this, like they experienced on Friday.
Yeah, you got to think that this team. We know this team is going to look a lot different next year. How much different, we just don't know. I mean, it's definitely sort of one of those things where you sort of say to yourself, okay, what can they do? Like I've heard some people say, hey, trade Kobe for for Lonzo, and I've heard some people say, hey, let's trade Zach, but like you're going to be kind of going right back to where you were 3 or 4 years ago, which I'm sure AK and Eversley do not want that. So it's sort of, okay, you need a point guard. Okay, fine. You need a big man that can both, be, monstrous defensively and shoot. Okay, fine. You want to do it in the draft? You want to trade somebody? It'll be interesting to see, what players will be available this offseason, considering that I don't think they're going to do anything in these next week and a half, next few days, I should say. So I'm whatever. Look, in AK and Eversley we trust. So that's sort of my synopsis of it.
The Bulls did come back on Sunday to finish out their mini road trip as they defeated the Detroit Pistons 100-86. Lauri Markkanen bounced back and had a good game in his stature, scoring 60 points, grabbing 8 rebounds. Mason Plumlee led Detroit with 12 points and 10 rebounds. Lakeena, even though the Bulls are, as of this podcast, is recording this on a Monday, 19-22. I like the way they bounced back against Detroit, even though they trailed again early. They were able to learn from their mistakes, at least in the short term, by having a strong second half and putting the bad Pistons team away. You had balanced scoring this time, unlike on Friday. Zach LaVine only had 18 and 33 minutes of action, but Patrick Williams, the rookie, came in and contributed with 7 rebounds and 10 points. Lauri, as I mentioned, contributed with 16 points. Otto Porter Jr. scored 3, but it was okay because Daniel Gafford, my guy who did not play on Friday, he contributed with 18 points and 11 rebounds coming off the bench with a +10 rating. So you like to see that for him if he gets more playing time. Kobe White, only in 17 minutes of action, even though some of that was garbage time, he came in and contributed with 7 points and 4 assists. Denzel Valentine, it's nice to see him again. He had 9 points, including 3 or 4 shooting for 3-point land. So you like to see this balanced scoring from the Bulls. So as we mentioned before, you don't have to have Zach LaVine carry the majority of the scoring load all the time. It's nice to see a balanced scoring for the team, especially against a bad team like Detroit.
Everybody scored, which was great. Everybody scored. So, look,
you get a basket. You get a basket. You get a basket.
Yes, everybody scored. So, look, I think that if we can see this consistently, I think Bulls fans won't be so frustrated. So I think that's I think that's what you want. Look, I guess LaVine only scored 18, but you know what? Again, that's okay. He doesn't have to score. He doesn't score 30 or 40 points every game. I think you like the fact that you want your star guy to kind of help support, help facilitate, and have sort of lead the way for the team. So I think that this is a good thing. Yes, against Detroit, yes, they stink, but again, this isn't the old BCS in college football where it's all about style points. Okay, as long as you get the win.
Yep. Taking a look at this Bulls schedule coming up for this week, of course, as we mentioned before, we are recording this episode on the Monday. So the Monday game against the Utah Jazz would already been played. If you're smart as we are, assume that's a loss for the Bulls. Of course, tomorrow, which is Wednesday, they'll host the Cleveland Cavaliers at 7 p.m. at the UC. Of course, Saturday, they'll travel to Texas to face the San Antonio Spurs at 7:30. They'll try to avenge that loss from the UC from last week. And then, of course, next Monday night, as they continue their West Coast road trip, they'll go to Golden State to take on the Warriors at 9 o'clock.
But remember, though, Steph's banged up, so they might look. I'm not saying they'll win it, but I think they might have a chance.
You say there's a chance, huh?
I mean, look, that's gonna be a very tough road trip for them. I mean, they got, like you said, they got San Antonio, Golden State, and Phoenix, and Utah. So they might go over, but if they can win 1, maybe 2, you'll finish at 500. I think you'll take that, but that's gonna be a lot to ask. But again, we'll see.
Before we review some of the key moments from this past weekend's games in the National Basketball Association, Lakeena, there were 2 major injuries that we have to get to. One was LaMelo Ball, the rookie point guard. He suffered a wrist injury according to all reports, he's going to be out for the rest of the year. I know, according to the Hornets, he hasn't been definitely ruled out for the rest of the season, but according to sources, LaMelo Ball's rookie year looks like it's finished. He was the leading candidate for Rookie of the Year. He led all rookies in assists and in scoring as well. And on the flip side, Lakeena, on the West Coast, I was actually watching this game via my computer this past Saturday as the Atlanta Hawks upset the Los Angeles Lakers. LeBron James injured his left ankle in the second quarter there. It was a really ugly injury, but according to reports, it looks like he's going to be out several weeks. A couple things. One, I think you can kiss the MVP goodbye for LeBron James for this season. And number two, Anthony Davis's injury, I don't know if it's going to get any better. If you're the Lakers, do you rush him back, or do you still have him on a safe timetable to make sure that Achilles is healthy as possible? Because right now, if both of them are out for any extended period of time, I'm not going to say this is they're not going to make the playoffs, but this looks totally different right now. If you're the Lakers, you definitely have to be concerned, and you may have to hit the panic button, but you definitely have to be concerned if you're the Lakers right now.
Try to see, beg, not, beg, but, beg to see if you can get Andre Drummond to come to your team.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably like the one person that can kind of keep everything afloat until, whenever LeBron and AD can come back. Like I've heard, they're saying LeBron might be out maybe 2 weeks, although some people say maybe a month. So you just don't know with high ankle sprains. It's always, sort of, unforgiving. But again, I mean, look, I'm not going to say that it's, it should be panic time, but I think, there should be definitely cause for concern if you're the Lakers, because, you saw what happened once LeBron left the game.
Mm-hmm.
They looked like a totally different team. So you wonder, okay, what can we do? Is there, who can you trade for? Do you have assets you can trade, or do you have draft capital you can trade? You try to get Andre Drummond to come into the team. Look, we'll see what happens. They got a pretty tough schedule. We'll talk about it in a little bit. They got a pretty tough schedule, this week. So we'll see what they can do. We'll see how this team looks. But I think you should be a little concerned if you're a Lakers fan. Just saying.
Yeah, you have to be concerned. As I mentioned before, going back to Anthony Davis, who's currently out with an Achilles injury, do you rush him back? I think common sense consensus would say no, because you don't know if that thing is going to win or if that thing's going to pop. So you have to rest him as much as you can. You have to take your time with this. I know now it's a bigger concern with LeBron James being out. How long, like you mentioned, we don't know. But the Lakers, let's just be real here. The Lakers will take every precaution for LeBron James to be out. He had to play every game this year anyway, even before the Anthony Davis injury, okay? And now with his ankle, you don't mess with ankle injuries. Those things are very tricky, just like hamstrings. Those are very tricky. You don't want to mess with those. So the Lakers will take every precaution to get LeBron James healthy enough to gear for a playoff run. Will he come back in early May to get some games in before the playoffs start? I believe that's what's going to happen. It depends on how long he's going to be out. But you bet your bottom dollar the Lakers are very cautious with this injury. They will be. Without LeBron James, they're not winning a damn thing. I know Anthony Davis. If Anthony Davis and everybody else on that roster right now, they are a playoff team. But a championship team, especially without LeBron James, oh no.
Well, also, that's a 36-year-old LeBron's ankle you're dealing with, too. So
exactly.
That's again, that's another reason if you're being very cautious. And I know some people have their own conspiracies about, oh, well, he's played, every game. This is sort of his way of taking a break. Come on, guys. Let's get a grip, okay? So, come on. Let's leave the guy alone in this sense. But like I said before, it's interesting to see look, they've got a lot of competent veteran folks in that Lakers organization. So it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do.
Yeah, and there's a whole lot of guys that need to step up. Horton. Yeah, thank you. Alex Caruso. Also, Kyle Kuzma, who's my top candidate. He's going to be in the starting lineup now. He was before with the Anthony Davis injury. Now he's going to get more playing time. So everybody who hasn't played as much or played very, very little, they're all going to have to step up and contribute more than what they usually do. Wes Matthews as well. I know he was a big free agent signing this offseason. So everybody on that roster is going to have to give it just a little bit more since both your superstars are currently out.
Could be interesting to see what they decide to do. So going through tonight's game, Sid, speaking of, they actually have a pretty tough test going up against Zion and the Pelicans. That's a TNT game, early TNT game at 6:30 tonight. So that should be a very interesting one there. And we'll see how the Lakers look without LeBron and AD.
I think TNT will duck his hand under the covers for that one, but at least if anything, you promote the heck out of Zion. The league told you last year that he's your savior. We'll see what happens tonight. Look, going back quickly, Lakeena, Zion Williams. I was able to watch some of that game against Denver on Sunday. He looks really good. I know, as I mentioned before, New Orleans is not a consistent winning team, but he's quietly having a good year, and that All-Star berth was not for waste.
Yeah, absolutely. So it should be very, very interesting though. I can't wait for that one. Philly and Golden State, that should be a good one there. That's the nightcap of the TNT game. That should be a fun one there. Also, Phoenix, congrats to Chris Paul. Recorded his 10,000 career assists a couple of nights ago. Just the third player with 10,000 assists and 2,000 steals, along with Stockton and Jason Kidd. So congrats to him. They've got a pretty interesting game against the final Tech Guys, the Miami Heat.
Yeah, the Heat has turned it around. They're currently a game over 500. They split their weekend series against the Indiana Pacers. Bam Adebayo had a nasty dunk over Sabonis on Sunday night. One of the top dunks, if not one of the top 3 players of the NBA this season. If you guys haven't seen it, go look at it via YouTube and social media. It was definitely a play to see.
A lot of it was. Oh my gosh! I'm sure. Look! I'm sure Sabonis could actually ask his father, because unfortunately he's one of the on the receiving end of a couple of duds back in his playing days. So
yeah,
it's okay. Yeah. It's okay. I'm sure he called him afterwards and said, don't worry, I've been there."
Yeah, and wrapping up Tuesday's action, which is tonight, the Nets will travel to Portland to take on the Trailblazers. Lakeena, Portland split their weekend series against the Dallas Mavericks. Of course, the Nets are back on the road on the West Coast road trip. Kyrie Irving will miss the 3 games coming up due to a personal matter within his family.
Yeah.
James Harden, once again, leading the Nets. That's going to be an interesting matchup between him and Damian Lillard. Blake Griffin, I actually watched most of this game via my computer against the Pistons on Sunday. Blake Griffin did look good in a limited role. I know he had his first dunk in 2 years. I know the whole bench of the Brooklyn Nets went crazy, but if he can stay healthy, his role is limited. He doesn't have to be the star now, as I said before the last couple of weeks on this show. Just play defense. You're going to get limited minutes. Just contribute scoring here and there. You'll be fine. He did that against the Washington Wizards on Sunday.
That's okay.
If I said the Pistons, I apologize, but it was against Washington.
Yeah, well, all the games are kind of like bunched up now. So so no problem. It's fine. A good one here in the East. Perhaps the Eastern Conference Finals preview, maybe. Boston and Milwaukee. That should be a fun one. That's a 6:30 game on ESPN.
Yeah, as we look towards tomorrow, nice action, which is Wednesday. Lakeena, I know the Celtics are back at 500, but going back to that game on Friday against Sacramento, the Celtics are a grade above the Chicago Bulls. Every time you think they'll get ready to turn the corner, they take 2 steps back.
Yeah, it's I saw some of that game, and look, give the Kings all the credit. I mean, I saw a little bit of that game kind of in between, the March Madness games, but I mean it's sort of, you don't know which Boston team you're gonna get, right? You get you might get the Boston team we saw earlier in the year, but you might get the Boston team that we saw lately. And look, they had a nice win against the Magic a couple of nights, ago, but look, that Kings team, I mean, look, we've said it before. Those are pretty good players. He Hill, De'Aaron Fox, Rashawn Holmes. That's had 25 that game. That's a season high for him. So, look, just a great win for the Kings, and not so great loss, I should say, for the Celtics.
Yeah, like I said, Boston needs to be more consistent, and they just have to turn around. Will it be enough and just in time for the playoffs? We shall see. Another game to look forward to on Wednesday, besides the Bulls and Cavaliers at the UC, which is at 7 o'clock. The Dallas Mavericks, they'll go to Minnesota to face a terrible Timberwolves team. Lakeena, uh, as I mentioned with Portland earlier, just a couple of moments ago, the Dallas Mavericks are finally turning the corner. I know they've split their weekend series against Portland. Luka Doncic, I was watching some of the game on Sunday. He had 8 straight three-point shots and made all of them. Of
Yep.
course, he finished the game 8 of 9. But Dallas is finally getting some balanced scoring with Finney Smith and Josh Richardson. As I mentioned the last couple of weeks, Kristaps Porzingis finally staying healthy, coming to life. If you can keep that guy upright and healthy, this Mavericks team can be dangerous come playoff time.
I think they can be. I think, look, we said con Mavericks fans is, the psyche saying that, look, don't get rid of, Carlisle. I mean, look, he's actually a pretty good coach. And also too, let's also remember too, I mean, these guys had, they had COVID issues early this year, some injury issues. So look, a lot of these guys are starting, kind of getting back into the groove. So now that they have, and look, it looks like we're kind of finally seeing the Mavs team that we know that was going to be early this season. We know about Luka. Look, I think that the winning percentage is going up, so maybe that he will get some consideration for MVP, especially with both Embiid and LeBron out banged up. So we'll see if he gets into the MVP discussion.
Yeah, we'll talk about more about the MVP race later. So, of course, now with the LeBron James ankle injury, we'll get into a more of the debate on that in a few minutes. Wrapping up Wednesday's action at 7:30 Chicago time, you'll have the Clippers at the Spurs. The Spurs still trying to hang on.
Yep.
They're a few about 500. No LaMarcus Aldridge, he'll probably get traded by the time we come back on Saturday. But the Spurs are still led by DeMar DeRozan, and the Clippers, can they take advantage of grabbing the top spot in the West now since LeBron James is injured?
It's going to be kind of free for all for those top seeds, right? I mean, look, the Clippers have been up and down. They had a nice win a couple of days ago, so we'll see what they can do, and I'm looking forward to it. This should be a fun matchup.
And capping off the doubleheader on ESPN for Wednesday, it will be the Brooklyn Nets at the Utah Jazz. No Kyrie Irving for Brooklyn.
Yeah, so that should be a fun one. Maybe a finals preview. We'll see. Going to Thursday, you got Portland and the Fighting Atlanta Tech Tigers, the Miami Heat on TNT. That's the first game of that doubleheader. That should be a fun one. Dame versus Jimmy Butler. That should be an interesting one there.
And also, too, at 7:30 Chicago time, the Clippers and Spurs will wrap up their two-game back-to-back series down there from the Lone Star State in Texas. And then capping off the doubleheader on TNT is Philadelphia at the Lakers. This was a good matchup coming in now with no AD, no LeBron. TNT will really have to duck his hand under covers for this one. You may have to do a quote-unquote players-only broadcast.
Yeah. Look, I wish they still had those players-only broadcasts. Like, this is probably one of those games where you kind of wish they still had it. But, look, it should be an interesting one regardless. I mean, yes, Embiid is still going to be gone. And, of course, the Lakers are now with about, AD and now LeBron. So, but I think it should be an interesting matchup. We'll see.
I know it's not going to happen. Can you bring back Snoop Dogg?
Might make things interesting there with Mr. Snoop Dogg. Golden State and Sacramento, that should be another fun one too at 9 o'clock. Going to Friday, you got Phoenix and Toronto in Tampa. Also to the Boston and the Bucks. That's another first of the ESPN, I should say, Friday night doubleheader. Cap off their kind of two-gamer, if you will. Again, this is to limit travel, folks. So I know people are saying, wait, didn't they just play a couple of days ago? It's okay. This is sort of, they're going to be doing this, at various times throughout the season.
Yeah, and also, too, on Friday at 7 o'clock Chicago time, you'll have the Miami Heat traveling to Charlotte to take on the Hornets. Of course, now that LaMelo Ball is out, I hate to say it, but I think the playoffs are not in the future of the Charlotte team this year.
Agree.
Let's see if Miami can pull away and perhaps make a late run to get a better seeding. Later on Friday, this should be a good one. Now, this game should have been on ESPN, but
Yeah.
Sometimes these things happen. The Denver Nuggets traveling to New Orleans to face Zion Williamson and the Pelicans.
Yes, Gobert versus William. I mean, Jokic, I should say, versus Williamson.
Hmm.
That should be a fun one there. Battle of the big men. That should be a good one there. Good one there. Excuse me. Memphis and Utah. That should be an interesting
Hmm.
one. There also Atlanta versus Golden State. That's a capper of the ESPN, I should say, matchup for Friday. So that should be an interesting one. There also Cleveland and Los Angeles. We'll see if they can kind of stay afloat. The Lakers can.
Yeah, Atlanta's playing some good ball here. I know they took advantage of the LeBron James injury last Saturday afternoon. Actually, they're playing better, as I mentioned in our last episode, under interim head coach Nate McMillan. Trae Young is starting to play better. So Atlanta's starting to turn around here a little bit. I know they currently at 500 on the road, but the
Mm-hmm.
Warriors are still trying to hang on in there to get one of those last playoff spots in the Western Conference. So this game should be fun. Who's going to hit the most logo threes, Trae Young or Steph Curry?
That'll be interesting. That should be interesting. Want to be over under there, so that should be a nice little battle there. Let's go to the NFL for a second. A couple of signings that kind of sort of caught me off guard. This came out kind of like on Sunday in the middle of all the crazes of March Madness of both the men's and the women's side. The Rams got Deshaun Jackson. I
Let's go ahead.
look, yeah, look. I was just like, oh, okay. Wasn't expecting that move, but yeah, I know you have thoughts. Sid, go ahead.
He's been injured the last couple of years. Things didn't work out in his return to Philadelphia. Early in his career, he was a double threat as not only as a slot wide receiver, but as a returner as well. Of course, those days are long gone. So anything the Rams can get out of him, it will be a bonus at this point because now you have a better quarterback in Matthew Stafford. But if Deshaun Jackson can stay healthy, it could be a good move. But if he's injured like he has been the last few years, it's going to be a
Curtains.
waste. You didn't pay him that much anyway, so
Yeah,
anything they get out of him, it will be a bonus at this point, especially in the stage of his career,
yeah. I
given
mean,
his age
yeah. This is
and
like a
injury history.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a low risk, high reward, potentially high reward, I think, look, he's probably going to be the best sort of, target that Stafford's going to have with the Rams. So I think, sure, why not? I mean, look, like I said, the potential, low risk, high reward potential. So again, this is sort
Hmm.
of one of those moves where you sort of like, okay, you know what, if it works, cool. If it doesn't, look, you didn't invest a lot of money. So, you know, you can probably just, eat that money and hopefully Deshaun Jackson can stay healthy.
Yep.
Some more NFL news real quick. The draft. They announced on Monday that the draft will take place in Cleveland on April 29th through May 1st. It'll have a select number of prospects, fans, and media in attendance. And, there'll still be some virtual, stuff, keeping their distance and whatnot. They'll be permitted to. We talked about it, a couple of weeks back. The clubs will be able to gather, in a draft room at the location. Of course, properly distanced and wearing masks and whatnot. So it's gonna be kind of like in the heart of the downtown Cleveland area. So Sid, I know you saw a little bit of this. So what do you think? Because I think it's kind of cool that they're trying to get back to some type of
Hmm.
normalcy. But again, they're doing it slowly. You don't want to be like South Florida where they're everybody's it's a free for all there. We won't get into that. Google's your friend, kids. But yeah, what do you think about this, Sid?
Yeah, this is a big step for the NFL. Of course, last year the event worked virtually. As the draft last year was virtually because everybody was stuck home because everything was on lockdown, and they actually had the highest draft ratings in the last several years. So
Yeah.
it's good to see them finally get back to some normalcy. I know they're doing this, like you said, the measures for safety reasons, but it's nice to see the NFL get back to some type of normalcy. Hopefully, as more vaccines are rolled out, hopefully the situations in our country are improved by the time training camp hits, that it'll be much better. And I truly believe that we'll have close to full capacity as far as NFL games concerned when the regular season kicks off in September. So this is a first step, folks.
Yeah, I think it's sort of slowly. I think, I think this is what the
Hmm.
NFL wants to do this slowly, do the look, have, the personnel, the team person, excuse me, various team personnel, everyone gather again, responsibly, distance and whatnot. So
Hmm.
you want, this is sort of a first step to normalcy. And I think we're going to see fans in these NFL stadiums, you know, and I know we're gonna have a preseason too, so it's gonna be interesting to
Hmm.
see what they do. So I'm looking forward to it. Should be a lot of fun. We're not gonna see Cliff Kingsbury's bachelor pad anymore, folks. Sorry. Nor Jerry Jones's Jets. Although you still might see his jet, who knows? But look, I think this is great. I think doing it slowly. I think that's what you want, slow and steady, folks. We're almost there.
And also, too, let's not forget, even last year during the whole lockdown situation, the NFL draft has become a prime time event. So,
Yep.
and it's a TV show, so they want to make this look good as possible, even in the situation we're in right now. Even though we're coming out of this slowly compared to a year ago.
Absolutely. Philip Lindsay has been released by the Broncos. One, are you surprised? And two, who do you think it would be a good fit for him, vie for his services?
I was surprised, but there's a few teams that could use him. I know Seattle just signed Chris Carson, so we
Yeah.
can cross them out. But there's always going to be a few teams that could use him. Maybe Atlanta,
Mm-hmm.
maybe the Chargers.
Arizona,
You know,
Arizona, maybe.
yeah, yeah,
He's
yeah,
out now. Yeah. Yeah. Look,
yep. So he has some options out there. So
I know he's a little bit of injury, has had some injuries the first few years of his career, but look, he was productive when he was healthy, and I think there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be vying for his services, no doubt.
I will say the Bears, but they usually don't do the right thing. So we can rule them out.
Exactly, right? I mean, look, hello. Kenny Galloway, how about that? Is going to the Giants and also
Yeah.
money. The money, I think that the money is sort of, that's what kind of is getting me.
And also, too, it was good for the Chicago Bears because it forced Allen Robinson to be on his P's and Q's business-wise to sign that franchise tag. Because there was a possible threat of him not being with the Chicago Bears. I'm talking about Robinson, as the rumor mill whipped up that Kenny Galladay and the Bears were having serious talks.
Yeah, but I think if you're A-Rob, I think you want to kind of like, okay, what can I do here? I mean, do you really expect the Bears to be competitive next year or contenders next year? I don't. So if I think you're A-Rob, I think you sign the tag, look, so that they can get traded. You can ask you're traded. We'll see if Hicks gets traded at some point. We know. Look, we called it, Sid. I mean, Kyle Fuller's now back with the Broncos with back with Fangio. So we called it. So that wasn't a big surprise. So any other NFL news and notes before we wrap up?
The Chicago Bears. I don't know why I'm mentioning them in this segment for this show today, but
no Bears talk. We promised each other no Bears talk. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, outside of that, I got nothing. I'll be honest with you. I got nothing.
But nothing. But go ahead. I know you got you might as well just let it out now.
It'll be interesting to see what the Bears do for the rest of this free agency. Will they trade or cut Akeem Hicks? He's age 30 now. I know he's been injured the last couple of years. Will they do anything significant? I know we had Zach Pearson on our last episode. If you missed it, go check it out on War Media on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast on War on Anchor. It'll be so Bears-like and funny at the same time if Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy have more job security that we are led to believe.
Oh, look, I mean, we've heard some various people. We've heard, Tom Waddle, said that, look, he thinks that there have been some other folks that have said that they think that, the Bears I think that Pace and Nagy are probably going to be here beyond next year, whether, folks like it or not. But I've got nothing. So, okay, you got, do you have anything else that, do you want to talk like Hawks or NHL or whatever and whatnot?
The Blackhawks, they didn't show up this weekend against Tampa Bay. I know you're hosting Coach Q's Florida Panthers at the UC tonight and Thursday. They need to turn it around. That power play has been terrible. The penalty kill's been terrible. Everything's been terrible. I know some people want to try to argue with me back and forth about this regarding Saturday's game. I get it that the goaltender for Tampa Bay, Valesky, was better than
Yeah.
Subban, but you got to start putting pucks in the net at some point. You were doing that early in the season. You haven't been doing that for the past couple of weeks. You just got to find a way to win one game and hopefully turn the season around back in your favor.
Yeah, it's just I hope they can, and I hope they can turn around but I think we're starting to see that maybe they are who we thought they were. Not to quote the late great Denny Green, but but that's I've got nothing. They're kind of look, them and the Bulls are kind of like both a similar path. They showed some promise early in the year, but yet they're back to being what they actually are, and that there's nothing you can say.
Yep. I know you want to wrap up on the recent passing of boxing legend Marvin Hagler.
Yeah, the pound for pound middleweight. I mean, dying this, peacefully a couple of weeks back. I mean, look, if you get a chance, try to, I'm sure they're on YouTube somewhere. Watch the Hagler Leonard and also Hagler Hearns, the first one. So, especially Hagler Hearns, the first Hagler Hearns fight. Those were really good fights, and he and Tommy Hearns and Sugar Ray Leonard and Roberto Duran. That was sort of like the pinnacle of boxing, and in the 80s and some parts of the 90s, especially when they were still showing boxing on network television too. Every Saturday and Sunday, in the spring. I love watching those boxing matches. So definitely the end of the era for that era in boxing, no doubt.
Yeah, I didn't know much. I've heard the name of Marvin Hagler. I saw some clips of him growing up. I know he wasn't talked about as much as the Muhammad Ali's and, like you said, the Tommy Hitman Hearns and the Sugar Ray Leonards and those guys from that era. But I'll definitely be watching a few of those fights. So I'm sure they'll have it on the YouTube. So I'll definitely be looking forward to it. But getting back to what you said about the popularity of boxing, pay-per-view killed it at the end of the 80s going into the 90s. It killed it. Will they ever get it back? I know the Premier Boxing League is trying to get back on television. I know it's been on Fox and NBC for the past few years, but the heavyweight division is just all but forgotten now. It's all about the middleweight and all these UFC guys like Conor McGregor and some of these other guys trying to fight these so-called heavyweight boxers for pay-per-view events. It's just that the pay-per-view really killed the sport of boxing, especially the heavyweight division in late 80s going into the 90s. It's real sad.
And it wasn't the same after that either. After that, and like you said, Sid, I mean, the UFC started taking over. Look, I'm not into the UFC. I never will be. I'm sorry, guys. I just give me look. I love watching the Premier Boxing, on ESPN, on Fox, and look, just those, some great stories with those guys. It's sad that those guys don't get a lot of the attention that they should. But again, this was sort of like the golden era in boxing for our generation. So
yeah. ABC Wild World of Sports. Oof.
Oh boy,
good and then the Olympics too.
Oh yeah,
and not as all, but not.
Yeah, and look, the U.S. When the U.S. was actually good in men's boxing, we used to sweep all the gold medals and all the Kuwait classes. So just said. Also, too, some sad news that came across the wires here. Elgin Baylor passed away at the age of 86.
Oh wow!
Yeah, 10 first-team All NBA appearances. With both Minneapolis and the Los Angeles Lakers. Remember, folks, there were the Minneapolis Lakers at one point. So, won a championship a couple of times. Of course, was front office guy for both the Lakers and the Clippers. So, that again, just another great legend that we have lost at the age of 86. Elgin Baylor, rest in peace.
Yes, he was one of the first black superstars in the National Basketball Association after Bill Russell. I know, like you said, Lakeena, him and Jerry West were the pioneer stars for the Lakers when they moved to Los Angeles in the early 60s. Of course, they went ahead against the Boston Celtics all those years and lost. I know Elgin Baylor is one of the first, if not the first guy to bring slam dunking into the forefront. Of course, we had the explosion in the 70s, which led to the 80s and 90s, and then where we are today. And so Elgin Baylor, he was one of the great players of all time in the NBA. I know people gave him hell yeah, especially when he was the general manager of the Clippers. But
Yeah.
they did get into the playoffs a few times under his tenure, especially when head coach Larry Brown was there for a couple years in the early 90s. So he deserves some credit as well. So Elgin Baylor, one of the faces of the NBA, especially during the 60s and 70s, where change was going around throughout our country. And he was a stand-up guy. And like I said, his legacy will never be forgotten,
Yeah,
both on and off the court.
Yeah, the first, black, like you said, first black player. Also one of the first African-American front office guys, Elgin Baylor was. So, he was just a pioneer all around. And, look, we know what happened with Donald Sterling and how all that's.
Yeah.
Look, if you'd ask, he'd be the first to tell you that a lot of that stuff, was actually true about Mr. Sterling. But again, but
yeah, people didn't want to speak out about it in the public at the time.
Right, exactly.
It was known in circles, but until Sterling had his issues a few years ago, like you said, that stuff was kept in house.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So, again, two great legends that will never be forgotten, and rest in peace to both of them, and prayers to their families. All right. And on that note, you can follow me at Keaton McGee on the Twitter and at Keaton_McGee on the IG.
You can follow yours truly, Sydney Brown, on the Twitter and the Insta at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80. You can follow War Media on all social media platforms. That's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at War Media. Once again, at WAR Media on all social media platforms. You can go to our website, weareregalradio.com, for articles, podcasts, and more information. That's WEAREREGAL radio.com. You can go to War or Anchor on all podcast platforms, which kicks you over to Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and that iHeartRadio app. Just type in that search engine box, WARR on Anchor. Also, we're on YouTube at War Media, once again at WARR Media. You can not only listen to us, but watch us do our thing live. Thank you in advance for your support. Mwah!
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
Yes. For Lakeena, I'm Sid. You've been listening to Second City Sports. We're going back to watching March Madness and all the other fun stuff. We will see you on Saturday to preview the rounds of 32 and 16. Until then, till next time, holla!